a town called Vik, and in Vik we're going to have our lunch break. This whole area called Reyniskervi and the town of Vik lie under the shadow of a sleeping giant. It's been hard to tell because unfortunately visibility has been absolutely dreadful all day, but for a large portion of the trip we've had a quite large glacier on our left hand side called Mýrdalsjökull, Iceland's 5th biggest glacier. Okay, so we're about to, as you can see, we're driving back the same way we came. We're about to drive through all of that farmland we drove through earlier on. And I'm going to maybe talk a little bit about agriculture in Iceland and things like that, because you might well wonder, I mean, in a country like Iceland, what can you really grow? I'll be honest, not a lot. But regarding crop farming, we do very, very little crop farming in Iceland. Farmers grow barley and rapeseed, and I think that's about it. Truth is that Iceland's climate is not ideal for crop farming, but it's very, very good climate for growing grass. So most of the cultivated land you'll see in Iceland is for grazing and hay production. We produce an incredible amount of hay. A few years ago there was a big problem all over Europe as the temperatures were rising. A lot of countries, farmers in many countries were having a lot of difficulty producing hay for their animals. And Icelandic farmers made an absolute fortune during that time because it happened to coincide, I think Europe was having its hottest summer in recorded history. At the same time, Iceland was having its wettest summer in recorded history. So it kind of went perfectly hand in hand, and we were producing phenomenal amounts of hay. We actually started exporting hay. It became a big export that one year. Because we could produce plenty of it here. We got plenty of rain. The temperatures don't get super hot. It is an ideal climate for growing grass. You might notice these trenches as well dug around the fields. This is drainage. If there's one thing else we got more than enough of here in Iceland, it's water. Not only above ground, but below ground as well, because we have glaciers, and with glaciers you're going to get a lot of water. So to protect these fields from potential damage, farmers will dig these deep trenches around the fields. And there is actually a bit of a problem with them. They work a little bit too well. You see, many of our migrating birds, I was telling you all about on bird life earlier on, many of our migrating birds rely very heavily on marshland for feeding when they come here. Well, these trenches have worked so good, we're seeing less and less marshland in Iceland. And so it's gotten to the point where the Environmental Ministry of Iceland is trying to encourage farmers, if they do have any land which is not in use, to please refill these trenches. We're trying to reclaim marshland for the benefit of our migrating birds when they come here. But anyway, most of the income from farming comes from the livestock. You can see around us now loads of sheep. And I love to talk about the sheep because this is the animal, probably the most important animal in Iceland. If it wasn't for the sheep here, the Icelandic people would have died out a long, long time ago. These animals really kept the Icelandic people alive throughout some of the most difficult periods in the nation's history. I mean, obviously they gave people meat, but they also gave people wool and leather for clothing. The bones were used as tools and toys for children and all sorts of things. And they were milked. For a lot of the poorer families of Iceland, the sheep was very much viewed as the poor man's cow, so they would also be milked. And so yeah, they're very, very important animal. There's no animal there is more of in Iceland than sheep. For every one Icelander, we've got 4 sheep. So there's an incredible number of sheep as well. At this time of year, you're still seeing them out and about in the wild. But And I mean, you can see them all over the place. You've probably seen a few of them in cases where they've been right along the side of the road. I think we've at least seen a couple of such cases today. They do tend to be, like I said, they're completely wild and spread out all over the place at this time of year. Because in the springtime, shortly after first off, the lambs are born in the spring, and usually not long after that, once the weather starts to improve, the sheep will be released out into the fields. And then, once the lambs are big enough, their farmer, they will release their sheep and allow them to roam completely free and unmonitored throughout the summer, which is a great system. I mean, it's kind of a win-win for everybody. The farmer doesn't have to be taking care of his flock of sheep for the summer. He can just allow them to roam around, live off the fat of the land, and he can focus on, he or she can focus on just tending to the land, cutting the grass, collecting the hay, and doing all the chores, the summer chores, around the farmhouse and stuff, and just allow the sheep to just take care of themselves. It's great news for the sheep, of course. They get a nice long summer holiday. Some of these poor lambs are only going to have this one summer of life, so I'd like to think the one summer they get is pretty awesome. I'd say the only negative to all of this is road safety. You see, when the farmers release their sheep, they do tend to neglect to teach them the most basic road rules: stop, look, listen. So when a sheep wants to get from one side of the road to the other, it'll just walk straight into the road, irrelevant of whether there's a 40-ton truck driving down the road or whatever. The sheep will just walk right across. So they have been known to cause accidents. So again, I was talking earlier on about how great it can be to come to Iceland and rent a car and drive around the island. If you do wish to do that in the summertime, I would ask you to be careful, be wary, keep your eyes open for what I call the kamikaze sheep. The sheep that graze by the side of the road and then with no warning just go straight into everybody's way. So yeah, please keep that in mind. My advice, if you see sheep by the side of the road, just slow down. If possible, if there's no oncoming traffic, maybe even go into the opposing lane and give them a little bit more space, because they're very unpredictable, these sheep. And like I said, they have been known to cause accidents. So, the sheep are roaming around all summer long. It does bode the question then, how do the farmers get their sheep back again by the end of the summer? Well, we have this big event. It's almost a social gathering, or a social event, that we call the Réttir. It shares the same name as the collecting pens that we collect the sheep in. The Réttir is also the event itself. It is the second weekend of September, so it's not that far away. And what happens is, people will get on quad bikes or horseback. They'll ride around the countryside, herding up any sheep they can find, and herding them down to these collecting pens that we have located in various places around Iceland, like a cake into slices. So you've got these smaller little pens within the outer circle. Each of these smaller pens are delegated for one of the sheep farms in the nearby vicinity. And basically, throughout the weekend, people will herd up these sheep they could find and take them all down to. That was quite nice. I'm not sure if you saw that. Some people on the left-hand side seem to be people maybe work at some bird reserve or something, because they seem to have boxes and they were releasing birds. So I'm guessing it's some bird sanctuary where they've been helping these birds gain strength till they're big enough. I don't know, but it was quite a nice sight. So yeah, the sheep are led into the middle. People get into the inner circle within the sheep. Finding sheep belonging to the farm they're collecting for, they will take them to their smaller pen within the outer circle. You can recognise which sheep belongs to which farm by its ear markings. Whenever a lamb is born, the farmer will not be too far away with a pair of clippers. And as soon as the lamb's born, they'll cut this unique marking into the ear of the lamb, and that way the lamb has been marked, and you'll always know which sheep belong to which farm. And this is a bit of a social event, so it's not uncommon someone might have a head flask in their pocket with something to keep them warm, maybe a 6-pack of beer or something. Someone might be playing a guitar or an accordion or something. So it's all a little bit of a party as it goes along. It's all a bit social, and it ends in an even bigger party because maybe a social club or one of the larger farms in the area will hold a big feast at the end of the weekend, and everyone will get together and eat a lot of good food, drink a lot of good booze, and have a big party. So it is a social event, like I said, and not only for people who live in rural areas. Many people who live in urban areas, who maybe have friends or family who own a farm, they will likely maybe use this as the last weekend of the summer to get out while the weather's still semi-bearable. Get out, go and help out and get some of that fresh country air before you head on back to the town for the winter. So yeah, it's a wonderful weekend. It's a great weekend to be working when you're doing a job like me and Johannes up here up front, because you'll be driving along and suddenly all traffic comes to a stop and everything grinds to a halt as you see ahead maybe like 300 sheep being led across the road, and all the tourists come up to the front of the bus and take pictures, and it's really good fun. And sometimes it's even better for the people on the bus when you're walking and they'll maybe just herding them along the side of the road. So you're just driving along and there's like hundreds of sheep walking alongside you. It's brilliant. And that's not that far away. Like I said, it's the second weekend in September, so it's about a month away or something. No, even less than that. Maybe 3 weeks away. Hann aldrei með bindi, hann alltaf skiptan svona hangir upp úr.
Já, svona einn af þessum körum. Já, við svona datta einhvern veginn.
Lítur ekkert sérstaklega, tekur ekki mikinn tíma til að hugsa útlitið. Okay, so we're not far away now from the next stop for the day, which will be this glacier called Solheimajökull. Is what's called a creeping glacier, meaning it's like a subsection of a much larger glacier, Katla volcano. Mýrdalsjökull is a big glacier, and yeah, attached to this much bigger glacier, much smaller glaciers, creeping glaciers like Solheimajökull or what's basically happening, what makes them creep, is that throughout the winter, snow falls on the main body of the glacier, and that compacts down with the air pressure on top, and compacts down and becomes compacted ice, and then more snow falls on top of that. That seat gets pushed down as well and becomes compacted ice, and more ice is collecting on top of the glacier, meaning throughout the winter more and more weight is being applied on top of the glacier. And I always say to give you a mental image of how this works, it's similar to if I would get a jam donut, put a jam donut on a plate, put my hand on top of it and start pushing down. Once I start applying pressure and pushing it down from above, what's going to happen? Well, all the jam inside the donut's going to start finding its way outwards and squirting out the sides. You're going to get jam squirting all over the place. That's what's happening with the glacier. As this additional weight is being applied on top of the glacier, it's pushing down, applying more and more pressure, and ice from the interior of the glacier gets thrust outwards. And this is what we call creeping glaciers. Now, even though Sólheimajökull is a creeping glacier, it is receding. It's melting at a faster rate than it's creeping. So bit by bit, year by year, it is slowly moving backwards at rather an alarming rate. So the glaciers of Iceland, it varies how much they're each receding, but on average, all of the glaciers in Iceland are receding around 40 meters a year. Meters and yards are the same, so just think, if you're not familiar with the metric system, just think yards when I say meters. 40 a year, which may not sound like anything massive, but think about an Olympic running course. The full circle of an Olympic running course is 400 meters. That's the distance it's going to recede in only 10 years, which is disastrous. It's fast enough that glaciologists who've come here and studied the glaciers of Iceland have made a prediction that over the next 150 to 200 years there will be no more glaciers in Iceland. Which is really quite sad. They've been here since God knows how long, and the fact that not quite within our lifetime, but a couple of generations down the line are going to see the disappearance of the last of Iceland's glaciers. And some of them are really big. In the southeast of Iceland, we've got a glacier called Vatnajökull, which is the biggest glacier in Iceland, the biggest glacier in Europe, and the third biggest in the world. The idea that it's going to be gone in as little as 150 years is just absolutely disastrous. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe a lot of people say that we're due an ice age, so maybe if an ice age kicks in, it might just save the glaciers. So who knows? Not saying I want to experience living through an ice age. I'd rather skip that, to be honest. But the glaciers would be very happy, I think. So anyway, we're going to be stopping here. It's a little bit of a walk from here to Sólheimajökull, and I would like you all to keep in mind Sólheimajökull is also what's called a calving glacier, which means on occasion bits of the glacier break off into this lagoon below, and this can cause mini tsunamis. And it's for this reason that we suggest people not to go any farther than this viewing area. But as you walk along, you'll see this roped off viewing area. I'd like to ask you not to go any farther than this. You might see some people doing it, but the funny thing is, to keep walking beyond that point, you have to walk past this gigantic sign.